material. In August, we sort of did an overview. In September, we dug into the market transformation theory and logic models, and that really included, the research, the undergirding research of product assessment and market characterization study that fed the development of the logic model and the theory behind that. So that was shared. Today, we're going to talk about market progress indicators, and Karen's going to show a little bit of how these two things connect in November. And thank you, Jeff, for the suggestion. So that was good. And then in November, we're going to be focused on cost effectiveness and evaluation plans. So these are the last pieces. That's a very shorthand description of market forecasts, total systems benefits calculations, and budget. So, there's a lot in November that we're going to still be unpacking. You all will receive these final drafts of the MTI plans in the packet before that meeting to review. And then, like I said, we'll be discussing at the meeting, but I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. Next slide. Okay. Any questions about anything so far? Want to address? Okay. Well, now we're going to get into it. We'll get into the meat of it and the interesting part. So, like I said, Karen Horkitz, lead market research and a lead for market research and evaluation at CalMTA, and then Elaine Miller, who's our senior manager of strategy, are going to, again, want this to be a discussion. If you guys have questions, just raise your hand. We'll bring you in. We want to make sure that that we spend this time for you to gain understanding of the MPIs that we're looking at for these initiatives. I want to just before I go there, Karen, looks like Cyan joined, so I wanted to give her a chance to introduce herself and her organization.
Yes, hi, Cyan Dandridge. I'm the executive director of SEI. We build leaders to drive and accelerate climate solutions, primarily through education and workforce development. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and Peter Miller.
Hi, Peter Miller, and I'm a consultant. I'm representing Natural Resource Defense Council, former staff member there, and glad to be able to join today.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, all right, Karen, you're on.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Stacy, and thanks for the intro. So as Stacy mentioned, this is kind of like part two of picking up where Elaine Miller left off on September 19th. She shared with you the program theory and logic models and walked through the strategic market interventions and theorized outcomes, but we didn't have sufficient time at that time to talk about how we are going to track and measure market progress. So that is the focus of today, to take it to that next step. So you can go ahead, Takwa, to the next slide. Here's the game plan. I'm gonna do like a 5-minute connect the dots set up here, what we're doing here, why it's important, and put it in context of our whole timeline to get to our application. Then I'm going to start with room heat pumps, do a quick recap of what Elaine showed you last time, very quick. And then what we're going to do from there is I'm going to take you through a synopsis of market progress indicators. Just so you know, there's like over 20 market progress indicators for each MTI, and we kind of collectively decided that it doesn't feel like the right forum here to walk through one by one, in detail, though you have that information. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do a synopsis, then I'm going to do a couple detailed examples to show you with milestones what they look like. So it kind of orient you, for those of you who want to dive deeper, it will orient you to that additional information that's there. And then we'll have a discussion for room heat pumps, and then we'll repeat the same thing for induction cooking. Okay, so just a real quick recap. You guys have seen this before back when we were doing the evaluation framework. We talked about like how critical evaluation is. I think everybody already believes that. You'll notice over there on the left side of this slide, performance against progress indicators and goals established at the time of MTI adoption. We really need to support accountability and ongoing investment decisions. It also supports the success of the initiative by making sure we're tracking things in real time and making course correction as needed. And by building trust, it's really important. Partnership and collaboration is key to market transformation. So just to recap on why this is important. And if you go to the next slide, again, from the evaluation framework, we said, look, we're going to follow best practices for market transformation. And there are certain foundational principles that, kind of guide everything that we're doing here. And you see that the first one is unambiguous market progress indicators and goals and metrics that need to be established up front. The second one here kind of touches on that as well. Theory-based evaluation, and that means kind of what Elaine started last time, the clear program theory and logic models. And then in those logic models, when we talk about anticipated theorized market outcomes as a response to our market interventions, we have to have market progress indicators associated with those. So yeah. Okay, so this is like a highly summary kind of version of the key parts of a logic model. I almost put up just a quick glimpse of the detailed logic model, but I don't think you guys need to see this on your screens, a lot of detail. This is really the big picture, and it kind of puts in context what we're going to talk about today. So, the logic model starts by identifying the market conditions, market barriers and opportunities, the interventions that Elaine took us through on September 19th. From there, the first thing that we see are what we call outputs. I'm going to define this further, but this is basically, once we're approved to start deployment, there will be outputs from the work of the team. So things that are work products. And then as we get into the market and as a little bit of time passes and we're doing our work, we will begin to see the market respond. There will be short, medium, and long-term outcomes, again, which you saw in the logic model that Elaine took you through last month. And then ultimately, the ultimate impact, the ultimate result that we're looking for in the market. So again, just a reminder, today, we're really focused on this right-hand side. Or in the logic model you looked at, it's the bottom, top to bottom. So this has come up many times about defining terms. So I'm going to start by defining terms here before we dive in. So outputs, I just mentioned a moment ago. Outputs are really the work products from the CalMTA, MTI team that are associated with the market interventions or activities that we'll be doing. So, that could be like engagement, things you would look at our documentation to see, did we have those meetings? Did we produce those materials, et cetera? But it stops short of the market's response. The next definition here is the outcome. That is, when we say outcomes, we're talking about the market's response to one or more strategic market interventions or activities. Then we have market progress indicators, which we often call MPIs for short. Those are metrics that correspond with outcomes. So those are the metrics, those are the things we're going to track market progress. I will just note, and Fred, give me just a second and I'll go to you, but I'll just note that there are assessments that will be done of outputs as well, but that's much more operational. And that's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today are the market progress indicators that are corresponding with the outcomes, the market outcomes. Yeah, Fred. Did you have a question?
You're muted, Fred.
You muted.
I think you addressed my question.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So then the next thing here that I'm going to mention is market progress milestones. Okay, now we're getting really into the details. So we will have market progress indicators. Those are really metrics. They're what is the yardstick that you're going to use? And I'm going to give you plenty of examples of these. We also have milestones. Those are different. Those are specific, expected, quantitative, or observed achievements including like specific timing, like by 2027, by 2030, that correspond with the market progress indicators. So if a market progress indicator is awareness, a market progress milestone might be a certain level of awareness. Or if a market progress indicator is a new standard, a milestone would say what's in that standard and by when. And then lastly on this slide, we have equity metrics. So an equity metric is I'm using that term to mean a market progress indicator or milestone that is used to measure equity. And, you know, when Elaine went through the program logic last month, you know, she showed you how we're really integrating equity into everything we do, into our strategic interventions. Same thing with our measurement. We're really integrating measurement of equity into everything we do. And in these slides that I share, you'll notice things that are equity metrics denoted in that green italics. Any questions about this before I go to the next? Okay. So I'm going to introduce two new terms. This came up in some internal discussions as as we were looking through the very long list of indicators. And it became clear that there are certain indicators where they're important to the program theory, but the CalMTA and the MTI probably has a limit to just how far they can either control them or get involved with them. An example of that would be like trying to influence electrification-friendly rate structures, right? Like that's not really CalMTA's charter. We're gonna, in some cases, provide data to support that for utilities, but that's not ours to, change those rate structures. So that would be, that would be an example of secondary influence. So let me just talk through the definitions here that we're introducing. Primary influence would be, a primary influence MPI would be a market outcome or metric that reflects a primary focus of the MTI, and we're really going to want to look to it to assess the MTI performance. The distinction with secondary influence is that it's something we seek to influence because it's part of our theory, right? Like making sure that a new technology doesn't dramatically increase rate or dramatically increase bills, customer bills, is really important to us. But the MTI has less potential to influence that. It's really important to track it to assess market progress, but probably don't want to use it to decide whether or not the MTI was successful. We have other metrics that will tell us that. So it's a little abstract for me to introduce this up front. I will give you examples as I move forward here. Okay, this is the last part of the intro here. Oh, Fred has a question.
So does Carol in there.
Okay, so Fred, you're asking about, can you repeat your question? Or that you typed?
The way you're using these is CalMTA has primary influence or has secondary influence, right?
Yes.
Or are they used with respect to the entire MT initiative, including collaborators, which might
The
include
way I'm using them.
Go ahead.
The key distinction I'm making is how you all who have a responsibility to make, to judge how well the MTIs are performing. It's to distinguish the metrics that should be used to judge the MTI performance versus those that we should track. We absolutely should track to judge market progress, but that they shouldn't necessarily be used to judge the MTI performance. That's the distinction.
So it's really the former. It's MT. You guys had primary or secondary influence is what we're saying within the framework of what everyone else did.
We're saying it's a different standard of assessment. Like if you think about evaluation, which is sort of my lens and your lens, it's a different standard for evaluating the success of the initiative. So it's important. We don't want to drop it. We don't want to not have a metric that's tracking what's happening with rate structures. But we also don't want to say, oh, this MTI isn't successful because California didn't adopt new rate structures. Instead, we'll watch the market adoption. We'll watch other metrics, which I'm going to get into here in a minute. Is that, could we, what I would suggest is maybe as I give the examples, let's bring up more questions then, because this is still just very abstract. I think the examples will help illuminate.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Karen.
And then was there one more question
Yeah, from Carol.
from?
Carol Yin.
So it's, what about MPIs that reflect the overall evolution of the market, including any primary, secondary, and non-CalMTA related influence?
Yeah, I think we would be best off to get into the metrics.
I
And
agree.
then can we bring that
Examples.
question back afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be more clear.
Yeah, and I think, we'll probably have a little bit of time at the end, during the public comment period. I mean, public comments are typically intended to just be statements, not necessarily discussion. But if there's a point of clarity, I think, we can potentially respond at that point.
Yeah, so let's dive in. I think that's, oh, wait, there was one more timeline. Yeah, let's go to the next. And I think this is the last kind of part of the intro, the next slide. Okay. I just want to put this in context. So right now, so first of all, for anyone who didn't see the announcement of this, we have seeded and launched the evaluation advisory group. If you remember back to the whole discussion of how we were going to have the advisory group, they are on board. They currently have the draft evaluation plan in their hands, right? We're not sharing that with this group yet because the structure we set up is to have those. We were very fortunate to get 3 outside, very excellent experts with decades of experience who will be reviewing those evaluation plans and then providing feedback on October 31st. Jeff, did you want to jump in with a question?
Yeah, just can we know who these people are?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's been announced, right?
Yeah.
I didn't see it in the packet, so sorry.
Yeah, we didn't put in the packet. I'll forward to MTAB the sort of announcement, but if you want to say who they
Sure.
are, Karen.
Well, it's our very own Fred Gordon, Raphael Friedman, whom some of you may know, was at PG&E for a long time. And Alex, I'm spacing on her last name from Illum. Alex.
Oh yeah.
Dunn, thank you.
Yeah, Alex.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Alex Dunn, who also has a tremendous amount of market transformation experience. She was at Research into Action for a while. She's at Illum. She's done a lot of work with NYSERDA, so she's got a great background. So yes,
Thank
sorry
you.
about that. Okay, and then so today, 1025 the pink, we're sharing MPIs. We're not sharing the whole evaluation plan because we think the most use of this very limited time we have together is like, let's let the evaluation advisory group do their job, give us feedback, and then we will have the final draft of the evaluation plan, which is Appendix F of the MTI plan, at the same time that we're sharing the MTI plan with you on November 14th. Then at our next MTAB meeting on November 20th to 21st, any questions that you have, about those details, once you've had a chance to go into them as far as you want to go into them, we will have a discussion and opportunity to address those in November. So really today, the MPIs are one part of the evaluation plan, but it's not the whole thing, right? It's just we're going to keep this at the high level because we know we have a couple of people who really want to dive deep, like Fred, who's going to be on the, who's on the advisory group. And then we have, other people, I think, we just want to paint the big picture of what we're doing here. So, this is Stacy said at the beginning.
Back over to Karen to talk about induction cooking.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. So we're gonna talk about induction cooking, and we're gonna start the way we did last time by just recapping on the vision and strategic interventions that Elaine shared with you last time, or on September 19th. Go on ahead. Okay, so the vision and theory with induction cooking. Induction cooking offers an improved cooking experience and a number of benefits. It's also the highest profile end use in all electric homes, and we believe a linchpin to full electrification. Right now, induction products are available, but there is an issue having to do with electrical infrastructure with 240 volt products. A lot of households would need to do upgrades. So if they're switching from gas, yeah, they would probably not have a 240 capability. And product availability right now of performing 120 volt products is low, along with consumer awareness and market share of affordable products. So if we can capitalize on the benefits of induction cooking, improve product availability, cost challenges, and help to persuade customers that, you know, away from their preference for gas stoves, we can really accelerate market adoption and the transition to an all-electric home. So that's just what Elaine covered with you last time, nothing new there. And then the strategic interventions like we did before. Again, this is what Elaine took you through last time. Strategic intervention is to drive manufacturer development of affordable 120 volt battery-enabled, battery-equipped ranges that fill that gap in the market. To engage influential builders and remodelers through incentives or bulk purchase pricing and marketing support. To support advancement of codes, policies, and practices that increase consumer preference for electric cooking and reduce costs associated with electric versus gas. To support advancement, once again, you saw this with the last one, of electrification enabling rate structures to mitigate bill impacts of switching from gas. Another one that's similar between the two, supporting inclusion of affordable products in California programs, particularly those that also address ESG, deploying midstream stocking incentives likewise, and then engaging with the Energy Star specification development to support continued product differentiation and increased stringency, and then building consumer awareness, consumer acceptance, and driving awareness of the technology and its benefits through marketing and education campaign in coordination with others. So those are the strategic interventions. Okay, so we're going to do what we did before. This is the synopsis, right? Before we get into the version, you know, the examples with the milestones. So baseline market condition, there's a gap in the market for affordable 120 volt battery equipped products. 120 volt products that are not battery equipped have limited output, and we don't think are an acceptable cooking experience for somebody who's been using a gas or other cooktop. So the desired outcome there, again, this is from the logic model, increased availability of affordable 120 volt battery equipped induction range products. In the short term, we'll be tracking the number of manufacturers that respond to the tech challenge that we would put out there. In the medium term, we would be tracking the number of competitively priced products available for purchase. And again, this pertains to 120 volt battery equipped. Another baseline market condition, we've heard from builders through our research that there are some barriers to induction, including they perceive limited demand from their customers, the homeowner. They're not going to put it in a home if that's not what the homeowner wants. The prices are higher, which is something they pass along to the homeowner. And also some of them mentioned supply chain delays, right? So like if they're gonna specify an induction stove or range, it can't be the case that like, oh, but that's gonna take much longer to get delivered. So the outcome we're looking for per the logic model, building installation of induction cooking grows, induction share of new construction grows. We'll be tracking bulk purchase agreements. We have a short-term milestone associated with that. In the medium term, we'll be looking for manufacturer appliance suites to include induction, not just for like the top end chef package, but more widespread and mainstream. Long term, we would expect to see, medium and long term, we would expect induction market share in new homes to grow. Baseline condition, efficient electric. Now, anytime I say efficient electric, we are talking about both induction and Energy Star certified radiant. So when you see induction, it means induction. When you see efficient electric, it means both of those categories. So currently efficient electric prices are high relative to inefficient options. The outcome and from the logic model, more affordable products available. We'll be tracking retail prices and we'll be tracking incremental costs to builders. These are two elements of affordability. We expect to affect retail prices in the short term. We think it might take a little longer to influence the incremental cost to builders of that wholesale or bulk pricing. Another baseline market condition, like you saw last time, there's an opportunity for improved standards. The outcome from the logic model, that version 2.0 Energy Star spec is developed. And then what we'll be looking is for that spec to include battery equipped products and to reflect at least a 10% increase in efficiency. Currently in the market, there's limited market awareness of the product and benefits. I mean, a lot of people, a fair number of people have heard of induction cooking. There is some awareness of benefits, but not that much. What we're looking for is for awareness and preference for electric cooking to increase. And what we'll be tracking is the percent of decision makers. Again, that's homeowners and property managers, the percent that are aware of the technology and its benefits. And then finally here, the current market saturation of qualified products, we estimate to be about 3%. The outcome we're looking for is the market share to reach a tipping point where these will become dominant. And we'll be tracking market share defined as percent of full category cooktops and ranges sales over time. Any questions there before we go on our deep dive to a couple examples?
I have
Haley
a
has her
question.
hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I used
Okay.
I used a physical hand and it didn't
Okay.
catch attention. So for the market saturation MPI, will you be looking at induction specifically, induction and radiant? If it's just induction, will you be looking at 120 volt battery equipped product getting market share, or induction in general?
Good question. Yeah. So we'll be tracking the MPI will be market share. We will be tracking all of the above. So yeah, we will be tracking efficient electric, but we are going to be tracking the individual types as well.
Thanks.
I mean, the manufacturer intervention is mostly focused on the 120 volt battery equipped, but many of the other interventions are looking at the whole market for induction. right? So like the builder stuff, things like that.
Right. Yeah,
it's
I
both.
think I'm looking, of course, at the green outcomes and MPIs, and just wanting to check on whether that market saturate or the market share MPI will also be picking up outcomes related to that, the specific induction product 120 volt with battery that's going to be more accessible for people who can't afford a retrofit. So I think seeing that follow through, specifically called out in other, documents with more detail, of course, is a good thing.
Fred had a question.
Just following up on Haley, I'm trying to figure out what's a means and what's an end. And really, market saturation, I think you want that's an end metric, isn't it? So I think it would be induction. To me, 120 volt battery is one means. So I might focus market saturation on induction, but all induction.
Yeah, and Fred, I will say, agree. And the reason we will measure all of them is because we are going to be including all of them in our evaluated impacts. So
do
in
you
other
want
words,
you want radiant in your evaluated impacts. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is that
it is all
a
three,
legitimate end?
induction, 120 battery equipped, and efficient electric radiant will all be included in our impacts. So it will necessitate tracking all of them, which won't take away from tracking any one of them. Does that make sense?
Christy has a question.
Yeah, Christy.
And just to be super clear, I think this is obvious, but this is not a percent of electric sales. This is a percent of electric and gas sales.
Yes. Full category. Yep.
All right, Karen, let's keep going
Okay.
into the detail. And then we have some questions, which I will, we'll take as many as we can at the end. And then if we can't answer the question, we'll follow up.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first detailed example we have here are the MPIs. Hang on a second. The MPIs that are most closely associated with the strategic market intervention drive manufacturer development of affordable 120 volt battery equipped ranges. Okay, so remember, this is an example. In this case, we have 25 MPIs. I'm just going to show you a small subset with details. And we are going to, at the end here, talk about how you can give feedback on all the rest of them for those of you who want to. So the logic model outcome here, the first row, is manufacturers respond with plans and product roadmaps for scaled production of 120 volt battery equipped products. In the short, so we will be tracking the number of manufacturers who respond with plans for product roadmaps. In the short term, we have a milestone. 2 manufacturers engage with CalMTA Tech Challenge of this MTI by 2027. The next outcome from the logic model is increased availability of affordable battery equipped 120 volt ranges. We will be tracking the number of products available to purchase from major retailers, not only direct from manufacturer, which is, I think, the 2 that exist today, which are only direct from manufacturer and also not terribly affordable. And so the milestone there is that at least 2 products will be available to purchase either in store or online by 2031. The next MPI is that the incremental cost of battery equipped 120 volt induction compared to 240 volts, trying to bring those battery equipped products closer to the price And the milestone that we have here is that the average price of those would not be more than double the average price of 240 volt induction by 2031. I will pause there for questions or comments. Jeff Harris.
I guess I'm still reflecting on the prior slide and Fred's comment about ends versus means.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize we've been talking about this for a while now, but it may be advisable to describe what you want. I mean, this is the difference between outputs and outcomes. The 120 volt plus battery technology is really trying to address the problem of limitations on electric service in order to make it more affordable to make the switch to induction or to electric cooking, period. And again, I realize this comment sounds like it's late in the game, but when it comes to measuring market measurements, maybe a little less specificity would be better here. I mean, like, just for example, what if a manufacturer was able to do a 120 volt induction cooktop without batteries? That'd save a lot of cost. Now, how they do that, I mean, I could think of a few ways actually to make it happen.
Won't be with a range.
Huh?
It won't be with an oven, but it could be a cooktop.
Right, not with an oven, but with a cooktop, you could cycle between burners and keep the power draw low enough that you might be able to just have it plug into a 15 amp circuit. It's possible. Now, it may not be the best product, but it might help convince some homeowners might want that. So anyway, I'm just sorry, that was too much detail. But it might be good to just up level to, we need a low cost installation where a conversion of the electric service is not required. And so anyway, I'm just
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
that.
you're saying don't over specify.
Yes, thank you. That was much more concise. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely worth considering, like, why over specify? We're not the manufacturers, we're not the engineers. We know what gap we're trying to fill, right?
Exactly. Yeah, focus on the gap that's the issue and the outcome that you want.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. I think Fred and then Christy.
Yeah.
Well, I think your third MPI here complicates the issue of whether to over specify or not, because this would be very hard to write unless you're getting specific, and it seems important. I think Jeff's right in general, but somewhere you've got to get specific enough to figure out what you're trying to accomplish in the market. I'm assuming that double the average price reflects that you are actually providing a different piece of equipment with cost. It just struck me as strange that this is really intended for limited income markets, but I don't know how you get around it. So I'm guessing what you're saying is there's both an additional product and there's additional value in having storage in the unit. So maybe double the price might be tolerable if that additional value could be used for more than one thing. Is that kind of where double came from?
Yes,
I think so.
and there is another MPI that speaks to that very thing, the other benefits.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Christy. Can you unmute?
Sorry, yeah. So I just wanted to go back and revisit the battery enables the lower, the 15 whatever circuit. But I thought that it also potentially had some load shifting.
It does.
And
Absolutely.
Okay, so I just want to be really clear that that is another thing that we get from this that could, okay.
That's one of the other energy benefits that they provide that we have in another MPI.
And it's also, those benefits are also built into our cost effectiveness forecasting. So that's, it's very true. It's a consideration.
Jeff, do you have another question, or is that a?
No, I did have another thought here. I mean, for this third MPI, I mean, the real thing you're trying, well, if you're trying to compare to a 240 volt induction, what you're really trying to do is say that the cost of 120 volt battery powered or other range is no more than the cost of a 240 volt with the upgrade that you'd have to make for the electrical service to get there.
Yes.
Because that's really the competition that you're looking at between those two products. So, and that's kind of a very technical comment, but I think it would also free up this metric to create a more competitive market situation, because it's the total cost of getting the induction cooktop in the home, whether it's 240 volt or 120 volt with battery. The 240 volt will have to include a service upgrade if they're moving from a gas range to an electric range.
Plus the
and all the other
plus the
benefits.
additional topic, which is that if you got one of these, if the power goes out, you can still cook.
Yeah, they're not,
and you
they're
also
not
could you also could participate in
yes.
Demand response.
peak load shifting, demand response, potentially with an income stream. So there are a few value streams here.
Yeah, so maybe it's more the comparison of total costs and benefits on both sides. So yeah, maybe you could have a total cost for the battery powered 120 volt slide in range stove combo, because it gives you an oven and a range and load shifting capability and cooking with the power off, etc. But when we get down the road a little bit here, it's the sort of total cost of ownership for both of these things should be at least comparative, I think, unless you really want the battery and everything, and then you should just skip the 240 volt induction market. But I'm not
that would be really risky.
I'm not going to recommend.
But, you know, as Christy pointed out earlier this week, you know, the battery enabled product could be great benefit for new construction too, because of these other benefits. We hadn't really.
Although in new construction markets, we could have another discussion about whole house batteries, and probably should have a discussion about whole house batteries.
That's batch 3.
And
okay.
If I could just add on, this one, Jeff, to your point, you're tracking the average price of the 120 volt product versus 240 is easy compared to tracking the cost of all of the upgrades it might take to upgrade service, panel, pull wire. So this is it's a metric we can track in almost real time.
Yeah, no, I get that, but maybe you need to have a proxy just for a service upgrade. I mean, there's a lot of other California initiatives focusing on that, panel upgrade. So you could do the comparison, Jeff. I totally agree. You got a great data stream from the ESRPP data set to make that comparison. So maybe the metric or the benchmark you're shooting for could have an adder in to allow for that extra savings from not having to do the upgrade of the panel.
There was a question though about if you say not more than double, how far are we, how far are we currently from that? So just in terms of the current incremental costs of the battery equipped 120 volt, and I know those products are pretty early stages. So versus a comparable 240 volt induction product. Do we know that?
We do.
Yeah.
It's currently 2.5 to 2.7.
But
times.
then I would ask that question, Jeff, though, would that 2.7 have to pay, would that be equivalent to what you'd have to pay for a panel upgrade for a 240 volt? I don't know. I mean, if
We'll
it
have to
is,
look.
then we're already there, that we're at parity, just at least from that standpoint of cost of installation.
Just noting from Randall a comment, just hoping to track cooktops separately from ranges to address a
Okay.
large portion of the low income market where there needs to be tracking of 24-inch wide cooktops and ranges.
Agreed. Yeah, I think we can figure that out.
All right. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually have two more examples and we'll see how we're doing after this one. The other one's going to illustrate something a little different. But the second example here, this time I'm giving an example of, you see these have very high numbers, these MPIs, because I tended to put the MPIs that are like the longer term big, ultimate outcomes. I want to just show you some examples of MPIs and milestones associated with those. So this one says outcomes resulting from all strategic interventions and awareness building interventions. It's really everything. This is back to that idea. It's like, this is not traceable to one strategic intervention. Okay. Now here we're talking about from the logic model, ultimately we get to sales of induction and Energy Star rated electric radiant, i.e. efficient electric cooking products increase relative to gas cooking products. And California market share reaching a tipping point share of efficient electric reaching a tipping point. So the MPI, efficient electric cooktop market share, the percent of full category sales. And the milestones we have here, that percent of full category sales increases 10 percentage points by 2029 and 20 percentage points by 2033. And I know in the detailed slide in the back of this presentation, I have a footnote that doesn't seem to have made it on to this one, that just saying we're working on finalizing those numbers right now, because we're also right now just finalizing the modeling, which you're going to be seeing soon. So those numbers might shift a bit back to the point about where we are in draft, but this is an example of what it's going to look like. There will be a number there. And then the last one here, the outcome from the logic model, consumers adopt the 120-volt battery equipped range product to realize additional benefits. Here's that one that I mentioned before about the additional benefits, and where we'll be tracking specifically as well the units of adoption of those type models and looking for them to increase over time. And on this one, you'll notice in the milestone, we're not putting a percentage point because it doesn't feel meaningful to do so until we learn more about where this goes. Comments or questions about these? It's just, again, I wanted to do at least one example of like, what do these really bigger metrics look like?
I just want to point out, Karen, you and I've had these conversations over the years that market share metrics at any given point in time are not all that helpful, except directionally.
Yes.
So given that we're at very low market share across all cooking devices right now, it seems reasonable to have a marker here that shows, that you're moving from the innovator part of the market, which is where you're clearly at right now with electric cooking, to something closer to early, you're moving through the early adopters at 10%. And then the 20% category puts you into the early majority phase, if I'm using diffusion of innovation theory. So I think the benchmarks, the metric, the milestones at specific points, if we're going to set them, just keep in mind that market adoption number by itself doesn't doesn't tell us much. It just says things directionally are growing, but it can be used with a diffusion of innovation theory to help us understand where we're headed next.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions with this example? All right. If not, let me show you the third example and why I added a third one. This is an example because I talked before about secondary influence, and I wanted to make sure you had a really clear one and what it means when we talk about the market progress indicators and milestones. So this is kind of a classic example of why we even came up with this concept. So this strategic intervention here is to support advancement of electrification, enabling rate structures to mitigate bill impacts of moving from gas to electric cooking. We think this is really important. And yet there's a lot of question about like, well, just how much could CalMTA appropriately do on this front, right? So that I'm going to walk you through the outcomes, and this is just this example of what we think are secondary metrics that should be treated the way that we talked about earlier. Like, they're important to track, but are they going to make the decision about the success or failure of the MTI? Probably not. There's probably other metrics that will tell you what you need to know about that. So the outcome here from the logic model, more data available on bill impacts for low-income consumers. So we think that's super important and something we can do. So the market progress indicator would be that low-income targeted programs reference the data that we're going to compile and help make more available. When we started talking about a milestone, we realized, we really can only just track the progress here. Like, it doesn't feel appropriate to say, well, a milestone is this many programs are going to, do something by a certain date. Like, we don't control that, right? The second outcome in this area is prevalence of electrification enabling rate structures grows across the state. Certainly, we want to track the number of policies or new electrification friendly rate structures that we're supporting that come to fruition. But again, that's something to be tracked to keep abreast of what's going on in the market. It's not really something that we think is appropriate for CalMTA to be held accountable for that outcome by a certain date. So I just put this one in here because we talked about primary versus secondary. It was a suggestion we received to distinguish from different kinds of market progress indicators that way. And this is the example that I'm showing. You'll see others in the more detailed information. Fred.
Well, I think part of the premises of MTA to begin with is you can't do it all yourself. And so I think it's appropriate in your evaluation framework to track things where you may not have a primary influence, but they may stop you or stop you at a certain point so people understand what happened. Because you can enable a lot of things to happen, but on your own, you can't make anything happen. And this is a great example of something where you may have a secondary influence, but it's going to be limiting if this doesn't happen. Or help define where you can get, where you can't get. For that reason, I think this is really useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Other comments?
I just have a question about, I'm not fully understanding the MPI. Are the low-income programs in reference here, are those low-income rate programs, rate structure programs? What were you intending? And is RHP, I assume, is room heat pump?
RHP is room heat pump. I think we've been describing programs that are targeted more to low income or ESJ communities. So it could be yeah, any of those that are
Weatherization programs. Weatherization programs could be in there. That there's some of these programs that help with climate resilience. They could be You know, they're giving away window AC units right now, right? During heat
Okay.
events. So that could be in that group. Yeah.
Thanks, Elaine.
I'm just having, it may just be that it's post-lunch
Yeah.
doldrums in my head. I'm having trouble connecting the MPI to the LMI or LM outcome.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. I think, you know, the one of the barriers to inclusion in these programs is the data itself. And you know, and how these are used in relation to other products. And so that's the connection there. I think that this is it's not the only outcome associated with that, you know, that this outcome feeds some other engagement with low-income programs, for example.
Okay.
But it's a tool, you know, to get this into programs because that's a gap right now.
Okay.
Is
I'm
what we've
thinking,
heard.
so yeah, if you have evidence from the RHP program that this would reduce the bill impacts for low-income customers by a certain amount, and then those programs reference that data to encourage whoever the decision makers are in that program,
Right.
that this will mitigate bill impacts. Is that
Yeah, that's kind of the logic.
interpretation? Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry,
You said
it
it
just
better
took me
than
a
me.
while to get there.
Me too.
Are there, Karen, I know you have sort of a list of um,
Yeah,
prompts, you know, that to go through. I wanted, before we go there, was just wondering if, you know, we kind of had to cut off for the room heat pump discussion, if there are any questions, any further questions about that either, you know, or comments that folks would like to make, either about induction or room heat pumps.
well, let's go on to that list of prompts. They're pretty general. I think anything that Stacy just asked, but you know, maybe just I know when we go through these item by item discussions, it's like you're zooming totally in on these details. And I guess what I wanted to try to prompt here is to sort of zoom out for a minute. Just to take a moment to like more overall kinds of reactions to what you're seeing. Obviously, we have not talked about the complete set, and I'm going to answer Kian's question about how to provide that feedback here as well. But Christy, do you have a question or comment first?
Yeah, so I'll start with for the room heat pumps. I think, you know, you've established that there aren't a lot of products that are appropriate for casement or sliding windows, but that is most of the window. Those are most of the windows in California. So I think before we sort of gloss over that, and I know there's things built in around increasing the offerings in that category, but I'm thinking about like in particular a casement window and just going, what are you gonna do for that? Like, is that even, I know, but you know, anything's possible, I guess. But that seems like
I will just share with you that I have a large house full of casement windows and only casement windows. And I think I've had this conversation with members of the team multiple times because I don't get the casement thing either. But let me just say this, very fortunately, and I don't have the total breakdown in my head, it's mostly slider. So we tend to put these together because there isn't a product for either, but it's like, it's really casement is small in California and it's mostly slider. Elaine, it looks like you're talking, but you're on mute.
Yeah, and I think it is mostly slider, and slider I think is easier to deal with than casement. Hopefully, yeah. I can
because
imagine
I
that
swear there's no way with a casement. I can't figure it out. I'm maybe just not a good enough engineer or an engineer at all, but
yeah. And then I have so thank you for that. That's helpful. Kind of put things in so it sounds like you guys have thought through that. Induction, my kind of like zooming out biggest concern is that, you know, it's on peak load building potentially more than other electric fuel substitution, measures. So while it is this linchpin for to full electrification, the timing of it vis-a-vis, the physical ability of the grid and all its various pieces, including homes, are able to accommodate this is going to could ultimately be a challenge, and then a challenge in demonstrating value in the short and medium term.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, thanks.
Other?
Hence the battery. We need the battery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how the metrics can really like make you focus on the strategy.
Boomerang
Haley.
game.
Haley?
Yeah, I'm continuing to mull over the induction initiative and the issue of the battery, not the battery. Like what products are we really hoping to move, and to whom? And so there's that equity component of this. And so one of the concerns that I have is and this is only from looking at, Karen's very brief snapshot of Milestones, but it seems like the team is not anticipating that a 120 volt product with battery is really gonna be affordable for a lower moderate income person buying that, considering purchasing that product anytime in the, well, at least the next 5 or 6 years, maybe one day. So I'd be interested in hearing kind of the team's thoughts about that. And I'm really just going off on the price is not more than double. And I appreciate Jeff Harris's comments about, what's the other measure that we're comparing to. But if the focus is simply incremental cost, and what that analysis is, you look at it one way, but if the focus is actually trying to get these products into the homes of people who are low and moderate income, then just the price itself of the purchase price has to really come down. So I'm interested in the CalMTA's team thoughts about, like, is there, where's the rosy outlook? Where does that come in? And one other comment kind of about that battery question, and I appreciate that Christy took us into thinking about load shifting, and then there's also, the resiliency part of you can cook when the power's out, which is a real thing here in California. And so I do think that batteries provide benefits both to consumers and grid benefits that a non-battery product wouldn't provide. But also, stepping back from that, the way that I understood the initial impetus to attach battery to 120 volt was as a way to overcome the existing barrier about performance and comparability to a gas stove. And so, Jeff Harris brought up, like, well, what if we don't tell the manufacturers how to do it, but they make a product that has comparable performance to a 240 volt, or at least to, a 24-inch gas range that might be in an apartment or something like that. Do we have to prescribe the battery part? Which, of course, gets us back to that other question about, resiliency and load shifting, and what is the right answer. But so I don't have an answer, but these are just thoughts that are mulling around my mind in that post-lunch haze that many of us are having.
Jeff, you want to talk?
Yeah.
You talk to. Yeah, I know you have thoughts on batteries.
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's kind of a lot in there, Haley, and I don't know if we're going to cover it all right now, but I mean, on the battery side and the whether or not we prescribe, I think we can definitely consider that. I will say the team spent a lot of time looking at the feasibility of a 120 volt product on a 15 amp circuit,
Without a battery.
and the amount of heat it can actually generate. And most everybody agrees that the experience that that provides to the consumer would be very low, right? So the battery is a way to provide a high quality experience on a 120 volt product.
And that's what the NYSERDA folks and NYCHA folks concluded.
Mhm.
That's why their spec didn't include, you know, it includes the battery.
Right. And
Didn't
to your
want to
comment,
put a compromised product out there.
about price, I mean, you have to kind of think about it over the, a long enough period of time, the product development cycle, right? The 120 volt battery enabled product that are out there right now, they're really like the Tesla Model S version of the product. And, we would hope and expect, and the work we will do will influence them to kind of build that, that Model 3 version over time, which will bring the price way down. It's also a very dynamic market, right? So just battery technology in general, right? A lot of it is driven by the EV market, which I believe uses a very different battery than these products. But we are seeing innovation, in batteries, which is going to continue to drive prices down. And the cost of the battery itself is a pretty major component to the overall cost of these new battery enabled product. So I do expect to see prices come down over time as they change up feature set and we innovate on batteries. And I don't think we've mentioned it today, maybe we have, but the product that is in market today does qualify for the home energy storage IRA tax credit of 30%.
It's so big. That's why it's a big battery, right?
Yeah. So there is some additional opportunity there to leverage IRA to kind of spur the market along.
And I think that, the way we've written the MPI now is very conservative, given the battery, trajectory and the fact that the pricing that's out there now is they're going after that super high end market. They're not, so it's a pretty conservative metric, I think.
Maybe we could aim for a Nissan Leaf, not a Tesla.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. I'm not sure who put their hand up first,
Fred,
but
I think. Fred.
okay, Fred.
Well, I think it's really hard to think about the market for this product because it's so many different markets. And it's like, I think Jeff alluded, new homes out of the picture. They're going to design the circuitry around the equipment. The market I'm thinking about right now is landlords, particularly limited income landlords that are trying to maybe do things in a more long-term, in some cases, an idealistic way than other landlords might be doing. That's a huge piece of your market. Some of them are multifamily. And so I'm trying to think of who's in a position to try to squeeze the advantages out of these batteries. And it's probably not going to be single family owners, maybe ever. Because I'm a little skeptical about getting single family owners to get into arbitrage on power markets and I'm turning things off and on, or I'm going to let somebody else run my home. But there may be markets that are large where this can play if you can get the landlords to think about it. And so these other advantages may not be as remote or difficult as you would otherwise think, or a segment of your market. And in California, a segment by my standards is huge because I'm from tiny Oregon. But part of these metrics may fit into getting through these stair steps into the market where, get new construction one way, you'll get a nonprofit, low income outfits that get a lot of their money from other people another way. And it may not be that reliant on the market economics purely for the stove. And other people are harder. So I think there's some merit to the way you're thinking through it, but it might not get you all the way there.
Jeff, did you have another comment? Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump back up to the higher level and say the overall reaction I have to what you put together is that I'm fully supportive of your discussion here. You're doing a great job, I think, of articulating market progress indicators and milestones, you know, with the caveat of some of the comments that I made earlier today. So I just wanted to affirm that I think you're doing the right things, the right direction, tweaks around the edges, maybe. In the future, one thing I found myself just mentally trying to keep track of in the tabular format, where you've got baseline condition and then outcome. Mentally, my mind is going to baseline condition is, I understand why you put it there, but then there's the market barrier that we're trying to overcome. So that just, in the future, if you were presenting these things, I realize it's just a slide, so it's hard to get all this information on there, but the market barrier to me is almost more important than the baseline condition. The baseline condition relates more directly to me, at least to the milestone, the near-term milestone that you're trying to set. Whereas the market barrier you're trying to overcome is more directly referenced to the outcomes. In my mind, they're more higher level logic model things. So in the future, when you're presenting these things to us, that might make sense to break it into 2 slides. One that's about market barriers and outcomes, and then the MPI, and then another one which is about baseline conditions, MPIs, and milestones. Just a thought. Does that make sense, Karen?
Yep, totally understand.
Yeah.
And I will say this, and then I appreciate the suggestion for how to do it in a future presentation. You're not going to see that anywhere else in the MTI plan. It really was just like a shorthand convenience to try to get it on a page.
Oh, okay.
So when you do see the MTI plan, it is going to be just that straight logic model progression. But yeah, I appreciate that suggestion, because it is a challenge to figure out how to present it, you know.
Well, I just want to say what you've done in presentation today is really good. I think these things are, I've been doing this a long time. These logic model components, trying to explain it to another audience, it's really hard because there's so much information. So you've done a great job.
Thank you. But yeah, I do appreciate the suggestion, and I hear you. Thank you.
We're going to go to public comment in a minute, but I wanted to, are there other folks who want to share thoughts? And Karen, I think we just want to make sure we raise, the opportunity to give additional feedback.
Do you want to do that, or do you want me to do that?
Yeah, go. So it looks like we won't be able to, okay, so I don't have an answer on the logistics of it, but if you want to describe the process of commenting in the Word doc, we will follow up with the logistics in the future.
Okay. All right. We are going to find, so first of all, you guys have it. You have the full set of slides. So in other words, I shared a handful of details with you, but in the slide deck that you got the link to, you have all of it. We would like to have any additional feedback that you have. And we are working at this point on an extremely short time frame to get these, to get everything finalized. So first, let me just say, as I said before, you're going to have everything in your hands on November 14th, but we are very happy to get feedback before then. If you want to give feedback before then, on what I presented today and what's in the deck, the entire deck today, that even what I didn't present, we would like to have that by end of day on Wednesday of next week. That is because we want to sync it up with what the evaluation advisory group is doing, and we are reconvening with them on Thursday morning. So if you can by end of day Wednesday get us comments. Now, what Stacy meant by logistics is, given the short turnaround, the best thing for us, which we're not sure we're going to be able to achieve, would be to have everybody working on a shared document. But one way or another, whether it's shared or not, we are going to get what we shared with you today to you in the form of a Word document. We already have that. We have it for the evaluation plan. So we will get that to you. Meanwhile, you can be reviewing, and it's just a matter of us getting back to you by Monday with, here's how we'd like to take your comments.
And we'll figure that out this
Yeah.
afternoon. There's just some security issues, so I just need to make sure we're not going afoul of those. So, okay.
But we want your comments. So
Yeah.
we're going to take
Yeah.
them no matter what. We're just trying to figure out if there's a streamlined way we could do it to save time, once we receive them, to make sure they all get processed.